In this brief um, lecture, I'm going to talk about purchasing power parity, what we call PPP. PPP is a tool to compare the economic well-being across countries. This is just like the price adjustment that we achieved with consumer price index. When we look at one country within, only that country over time, if we look at the GDP of, let's say, US in 2012, look at all the commodities and services we produce, multiply with the price level, and then we do the same thing in 2000, 12, 13, 14, 15. When we look at the monetary value, we do not know whether the quantity is increasing, if there's an increase over time, or the increase is coming from the price side, or it's a combination of both. So the tool to normalize for that price difference was you know dividing the nominal GDP by CPI or GDP deflator to get to the real GDP. Um, what that does is eliminates the price differences across years and gives us a set of numbers that we can look at and say that, hey, the production level actually is increasing or decreasing, depending on the numbers that we have in front of our eyes. So GDP deflator and CPI, consumer price index, does the job for one country over time what PPP does it for across countries. Um, for example, this is going to be hopefully clear with an example. Let's say that in 2013, US GDP was $100. That is, we looked at all the commodities, services we produced, we multiplied them with their prices, add them up, and then we have $100 as our total GDP. We did the same thing for Canada, and we, looked at the commodity services produced, multiplied with their prices. Obviously, the currency is different there. We converted to US currency, and then the total GDP in Canada in US dollars is $120. So just by looking at this, can we say that the Canadian well-being is 20% higher than US well-being? Not necessarily. This depends on what we can buy with $100 in US and what we can buy with $120 in Canada. For example, if I can buy one laptop with $100 in US, and if I need $120 to be able to buy the same laptop in Canada, then our well-being is the same. Obviously, this is just for this particular commodity. There may be other commodities whose prices may be different, some cheaper in Canada, some more expensive in Canada. To be able to have a good proxy for the general price difference in a country, we do the same thing as we did with CPI and GDP deflator. That is, we take a basket of commodities and we say, hey, how much does this cost in the United States and how much the same exact basket costs in Canada? And that gives us a good idea about the general price difference across countries. So let's say that a representative basket of commodities, a basket that is consumed by an average consumer in US and Canada, can be purchased for $100 in US, but it can be purchased for $120 in Canada. Then in effect, we have the same purchasing power, even though Canada has $120 of GDP, $20 more GDP than US does. We have the same purchasing power. So for every dollar that I have in US, I need $1.2 in Canada, which is going to give me a PPP adjusted Canadian GDP as $100. I will just take the nominal GDP of $120. If you look at the last line, I'm going to take the nominal GDP, Canadian GDP of $120 and divide it by the price that I need in Canada for every dollar that I have in US, which is 1.2, and then I will get $100 as the PPP adjusted Canadian GDP. So let's assume now that the Canadian GDP goes up to $140 in 2014. A year later, if we look at again all the commodity services produced in Canada and we multiply with their prices in 2014, and then we convert it to US dollars and we say, oh, okay, $140 is what we have in Canada for as their GDP. And then we look at the price difference in 2014 in US and in Canada and say, all right, if we adjust for the price difference, if we take the US as the base country, and then if we adjust it according to US prices, we get $134. Then what is the price difference in US and Canada? For every dollar that I have in US, how much do I need in Canada to be able to buy the exact same thing? So if I say for every dollar I have in US, I need X dollars in Canada, the equation would be set as the line next to the last one. 140 divided by X is 134, gives me the PPP adjusted. So then for every dollar that I have in US in 2014, I need $1.045 in Canada. Well, let's assume that the price level did not change in the United States from 2013 to 2014. So a basket of commodities costs $1 in US in 2013, and exact same basket costs $1 in 2014 as well. Now in Canada, I need $1.2 to buy that basket in 2013, and I need $1.045 in Canada in 2014. So taking the US as my base further allows me to look at the price difference in Canada from one year to the next. Since I know that that price stayed the same in the United States from 2013 to 14, this comparison of 1.2 versus 1.045 in Canada across years makes sense and gives me an idea about the price difference over time in Canada as well. So then I can calculate the inflation rate in Canada from 2013 to 14, and that is done on the last line. And we see that the the general price level went down by 13% in Canada. Hopefully this shed some light on the PPP concept. If you have further questions, you can always email me. In the next set of slides that I will post, again with narration, I will talk about the general equilibrium, how we arrive at the GDP in the United States at $17 trillion in 1 year and 17.2 in the next year. What makes the producers increase their production level, or consumers increase their consumption level, or decrease or keep it the same. We'll look at those dynamics, and in doing so, we're going to be looking at concepts like marginal propensity to consume and income multiplier. So that's going to be coming up next. Thanks for listening.